I'm really excited to be here today to talk about something that my 20-something self probably would never have imagined believing. And that is, yes, business as a force for good. And, you know, in my 20s, well, actually, even now, I lean a little punk rock. And so the idea that business could be a force for good wasn't something that really was in my view. And I didn't see a lot of models of that. I didn't really admire and think that there wasn't many businesses that I admired. And so I thought, well, that's not really how you do good in the world. And I had convictions. And so I didn't really see that playing out in the world when I looked around. But what I've realized is that if you can match your convictions, if you can match your values with your business, it really can be a complete force for good. And I think it's really interesting to think about that in the city of Philadelphia, because Philadelphia was founded by William Penn, who was a Quaker. If many of you know that and know a little bit about Quakers, but I think Quakers imparted us with an amazing gift, which is this DNA, because the Quakers believe that God is in everyone. And if you hold that belief, it also follows that everyone is equal. And you probably know where that leads. It's been a pretty powerful notion, and whatever your religious belief, like I said, if you believe that, that's a conviction that's pretty strong, and that means that applies to every aspect of your life, from the way you operate in your private life, in your business, and whatnot. The other thing that Quakers believe in the culture is that there's no leaders telling them what to do. There's no priests, there's no ministers, there's no one interpreting that. So they really believe in thinking for yourself and deciding how does what we believe apply to the decisions you're making. You really have to take ownership of the decisions you're making. And so, you know, that idea that we are equal, you can see how that played out pretty strongly in the Quaker community. They were known for, once you decide that everyone's equal, you can't tolerate slavery. And once you decide that everyone's equal, you can't imagine a world where women don't have rights. And so they were tireless advocates for both of those ideas. And you know, many people give the Quaker movement credit for really changing the world on those two topics. And that applied to their businesses. They didn't own slaves. That applied to their church. Women were equal in their church. And that's pretty powerful. And if you're a little bit confused about what Quakers are, maybe think about punk rock. They have strong convictions. They believe in individual expression, anti-authoritarian, and a strong value on integrity, on standing up for what you believe and sticking with that. And I would say maybe the only place where Quakers and punk rock diverges that I can think of is just the place where you go to find meaning. Punk rock, loud, sweaty, intense. I found plenty of meaning in those circumstances myself, so I certainly advocate for it. But for Quakers, it's through quiet contemplation. And so I want to use that as a tool today, a little bit for all of us, a little quiet contemplation as we prepare to kick off this day and think about our future here. And I think one of the powerful ways to have conviction is actually to imagine yourself in the future. When you're faced with things in the day, it's really easy to make decisions based on what's in front of you. But if you start to imagine where you want to be in the future, it really changes things for you. And if you can get an alignment between that, if you can start to understand where you want to be and what's happening in your present day, it's really, really powerful. So let's start off with a simple exercise. I want you to think about yourself 8 to 10 years in the future. Feel free to close your eyes if that helps. I'm just going to talk you through it. 8 to 10 years is far enough in the future that your life will be very different, but it's probably something you can imagine. So really try to think about a specific day in the future. What are you doing? Where do you wake up? Where do you live? Who's there with you? What are you doing with your time? What is the work that you do? What is your family like? What do you value? Think about how it really feels in this day. Think about the things that you value and how they're being manifest now, 10 years from now. Things you really care about. How are you making progress towards those? And don't forget about your dreams. It's really easy to forget about dreams in the short term. But what are the dreams you have 10 years from now? And so that was a pretty short amount of time to imagine your future, but hopefully gave you a little glimpse, and it's starting to get your mind prepared for thinking about today. And so hold that inside you, and maybe think more about that in an ongoing way. I strongly recommend that. But I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about another piece of the Philadelphia DNA that really inspired me, which is the junto. The junto was formed by Ben Franklin and friends in 1727, and they had, a pretty simple idea about exchanging knowledge of business affairs. But what was really powerful about, so this is a diverse group of people, I should say. This is regular business people. This is cabinet makers, glaziers, shoemakers, clerks. Franklin himself was a printer, and even a bartender. And it probably won't surprise you, that they were interested in improving themselves. But what may be of a bit of a surprise, at least it was for me, thinking about business, was they also really wanted to improve their communities and to help other people. And so they saw business as a tool to make change in the world. And that was really a light bulb moment for me, when I started to think, wow, and it's probably not a surprise, it probably won't be a surprise to any of you to realize that some of the original members of this junto, this 12-person body, this club, were Quakers. So they had this conviction, and they thought about, what is the change we want to see in the world? And I think they equated a thriving city as also a place that is good for business. And so they weren't giving it away. They wanted to run a great business, but they also wanted to live in a great city. And I think for them, a great city was a city that treated people fairly. And I think the sick were cared for. And I think the masses were educated in that city. And I think they were always asking themselves, what is the city we want for ourselves? I think that's what the junto was asking. And because of that, they're credited, many of the members of the junto are credited with starting the first lending library in America, the first hospital, fire companies, insurance companies, schools. And so when you want that kind of city for yourself, you do those kinds of things, and your convictions are contagious, and you make things happen. And I think what's really interesting about this time, too, is, remember, this is the 1700s, so they were literally building the city at the time, so it was probably pretty present in their minds. You could see the city being built. What city do we want for ourselves? We should think about this. We should think about what we believe in and how we want that to be manifest in our institutions and our businesses and everything we do. And so I think they thought every day, what is that city we want for ourselves? And so let's do an exercise right now, because I think cities are constantly changing, and we're constantly building them, and I think many of you are a big part of that. So what is the Philadelphia you want to live in? So let's go back to that Quaker reflection piece, that tool. 8 to 10 years from now, what is the Philadelphia you want to live in? Close your eyes once again if that helps. It's pretty dark here, so you may not need to. But what is that Philadelphia you want to live in? What do the streets look like? Are they tree-lined, bike lanes? That's in my future, my vision. But what about our parks and waterfronts? Are they accessible? Are they beautiful? Are they community places? Are they places that we all value? What about our neighborhoods and the downtowns in those neighborhoods? Are they vibrant? What about schools? Are you walking your kid to your neighborhood school? So hopefully, I'm assuming many of you just had some pretty powerful visions. So while we have to move on, I don't want to move on from those visions. So keep those inside of you, because we're going to be working together over these next 10 years to make those happen. But I want to tell you now another story. I want to tell you a story about a little bit of what gave me the strength and power to have a conviction such as that businesses really can do good. And that's really the story of Indy Hall. So when Alex Hillman and I met back in 2007, we had this mission to create a co-working space. And if you don't know what co-working is, it's very simply just people getting together and working in the same space. That's the simple idea of co-working. But I didn't need a space to work in. I was running, by that time, Punk Avenue, which is a design studio. We had space, so I didn't need space. But I had an interest in creating a clubhouse for the city. I thought that the city would be a better place if we had a place where people came together. I thought people would get to know each other. I thought that people's skills would improve as they help each other. And that was what drove us. So we wanted a successful business. We really did want a successful business. But we thought success would not really be a true success unless we were really helping the city be a better place. And so that really changed things for me. And so we were focusing on the community. We wanted to create a community of trust. And every time a tough decision came up, and like the little voice in you that says, like, you know, the fear inside of you that wants to make a different decision, that wants to make the safe decision, we said, well, what is the way in which the city will be better? How are we going to support that? And so we let it ride, and that was scary, I have to admit. You have convictions and you believe in these things, but you're still, you've got an investment of time and money and effort, and you don't want it to fail. But what was amazing is that each time we took that risk, it always paid off. And the community kept growing. And we watched people coming together to solve problems. And at first, more like business problems, helping each other with business, helping each other improve their businesses, improve themselves, very, very similar to the Junto. And we were inspired by the Junto then. We saw that, and we knew that that was a powerful model. But you're still, you're not sure, because you're running this business and you have real concerns around business. But we kept letting it ride. And each time that happened, I got more and more confidence in the fact that this is possible. And that the community just amazed us. And we really never knew what would happen, but the community started to do other things. It started to do things related to civic issues, civic hacking, open data, using their tools, their skills to try to solve problems like homelessness and hunger and transportation concerns for our city. And then it kept growing, and it started to really be a spirit. The more we just let that happen, and the more we always said to people, just ask for forgiveness. Don't ask for permission. Ask for forgiveness. And that's played out into another kind of methodology, which I think has been infectious in the city. And what's really amazing to us is then it just went out of its door. Indy Hall, the spirit just went through the doors, and things like the Nerd Street Market in Old City were founded. And to me, what blew me away is I had nothing to do with this. I didn't have any specific task or any specific thing I did in making the Nerd Street Market happen, but Indy Hall, the community, helped make it happen. And so when I saw that happening, I said, I love farmers markets. I love the fact that bringing local food in, I love it as a community gathering place. I think it's valuable to our city. I would want this to happen, but I didn't even help make, I didn't have anything to do with it. And that blew me away. That was another light bulb moment for me, that the community was much more powerful than one person, and that if you let it ride, if you believe in your convictions, that it could pay off in a business setting. And I feel like that has started to spread out in what now people are thinking about as Nerd Street. And Nerd Street, North 3rd Street, if you haven't heard, I think in many people's minds is this tech cluster. But I don't think of it as a tech cluster. I think of it as that spirit of people helping each other and thinking about their businesses and their community in one connected way is Nerd Street. And I think it's a spirit for our city. It's really, I think of Nerd Street as just a group of hopeful people that have a desire to have an amazing city, the kind of city they want to live in. And so I really hope that spirit, and really to be a nerd is just to be passionate about something. So I hope that spirit, that becomes the new spirit, that becomes a spirit that spreads not just on Old City, but spreads throughout the entire city and the entire country. And so all along, we had restarted the Junto, because, as I said, it was an inspiration to us. And so we were gathering people together and talking about these issues and trying to support each other in a similar way. And it's been a really powerful thing for all of us, because we're all running businesses and we all feel the pressures of making payroll or doing anything else that it takes to run a business. But we gathered together, and last September we gathered in Old City in the Arch Street Meeting House, in a Quaker meeting house, which is pretty cool. And we talked. And I think it's important to note this is not a movement of just for-profit businesses, but nonprofit and for-profit and people that really care about the city gathered together, and we supported each other in that. When it's hard, you need support. And for Punk Ave, the business I told you about that I had and still run, informing Indy Hall, the way we have done it, it's given me courage to bring more of that back to Punk Ave. And we have reframed over the years what we do, and we're interested in having our work aligned with making a more livable and vibrant city and supporting wellness and creating knowledge and culture. And that's not easy to do every day, because every day you still have to, like I said, pay the bills, and you have to, so many issues in running a business. But this has been a great way in which we've aligned ourselves. It's just a regular business. It's not a social enterprise, which are amazing ways to change the world as well through business, but regular business trying to help create the world that we want to live in. And it's given us power and a way to measure our success. And so let's maybe reflect a little bit here for a moment. I know it's hard, I know it's not an easy thing to do, but is your work aligned with your values? I know everyone here has convictions and wants to see the world a certain way, wants to see our city a certain way. Maybe take a second to think about that. And can you use your work, your business if you run it, your career as a tool for good? And this is just a regular business. Remember, these original Junta members are shoemakers, glaziers. These weren't, they weren't building businesses, they weren't any special kind of business. And I really believe, going back to the beginning, that the business as a tool for good is really deep, really, really deep in the DNA of Philadelphia. And I think we're very fortunate at that. And I think Philadelphia taught me that. I think Philadelphia brought that out of me. And I feel very fortunate that it did that for me. And so really what I want to ask you to do today is, let's just reclaim our family business. Thank you.